So I wanted to get on here to talk about my VBAC experience with my daughter. So I gave birth to her about almost 3 months ago. And with my first child, I had an emergency C-section. So for my second one, I really wanted to do a natural birth, and at first I thought it was impossible. So I did my research and I wanted to make a video that could maybe help anybody out there who's attempting a natural birth after a C-section. With my first child, with my son, I had an emergency C-section. I was pushing for about 2 hours and his heart rate started racing, and the doctor gave me an option of either getting a C-section or keep pushing, but it would have put him at risk. So of course I had to pick that I had to do a C-section. So when he came out, he actually weighed 9 pounds and 2 ounces. So fast forward with my daughter, she was being predicted to weigh 9 pounds or even more than my son, since my son was 9 pounds and 2 ounces. So since originally I had a C-section at first, my doctor scheduled me for a C-section for my daughter as well at 39 weeks. She recommends doing her surgeries at 39 weeks, not at 40 weeks. So at 39 weeks, I had my C-section scheduled, and I had asked my doctor if I'm a candidate for a Vbac, and she said I can, and I'm a candidate if my daughter is ready to come out at 37 weeks, because at 38 weeks it already puts my body at risk, since I can't push out anything over 8 pounds since my pelvic bone is so narrow. I did a lot of research and watched a lot of videos on how to breathe and how else to induce my labor. I did a lot of walking, which I think really did help me. So at my 36 weeks checkup, whenever she checked me, she said that my daughter was still sky high and I'm not even dilated whatsoever. And I wanted to give birth to my daughter around 38 weeks, because 38 weeks, technically babies are full term 37 and above. I've watched videos on YouTube that if you're dilated, then you can start taking castor oil. But if you're not dilated at all, there's no point of taking castor oil, because it wouldn't work. But I truly believe that taking castor oil and taking the Midwives Brew dilated my cervix, because at my 36 weeks checkup, I wasn't dilated at all. Upon my 37 weeks checkup, she didn't want to measure me because she was still so high at my 36, and so she said, okay, we'll just see you on your C-section date at your 39 weeks, which was supposed to be January 13th. My daughter was due January 19th. So I was really aiming to just try everything to give birth to her early. So Sunday was my every week. At my 38 weeks, that Sunday, when I turned 38 weeks pregnant, I tried the Midwives Brew, but I was a little bit paranoid of all the reviews that I read online. So I did half of all the measurements. So instead of 2 tablespoons of the Midwives Brew, I tried 1. And I was having a little, a small contractions, but I slept through it, which was fine. Monday, I made myself the verbena tea, and I added 2 small drops of castor oil, just because I was scared. I didn't want to take 2 whole tablespoons. I didn't want my daughter to poop in my stomach. There's just so many mixed reviews that I read online that I was kind of skeptical about. So I was really careful with what I did. So like I said, on Monday I did 2 drops with my tea and I drank it. Didn't have any contractions at all. Mind you, with my son, my water broke and I didn't have contractions at all. I was having contractions, but I didn't feel it. So my pain tolerance is really high. So I was really confused if I was feeling contractions or if it was Braxton Hicks. I had no idea. So the next day on Tuesday, I made cantaloupe smoothie and I added 1 tablespoon of castor oil. I didn't want to make the Midwives Brew because honestly it was disgusting. Like, it was so nasty. So I drank the smoothie. It was a small amount with 1 tablespoon of castor oil. I took it around 4 p.m. Later that night at 10 p.m. I started having my mild contractions. My stomach was kind of just like cramping a little bit when I was putting my son to sleep, and I ignored it because, you know, throughout my whole pregnancy on my 3rd trimester I would have random like contractions or Braxton Hicks. It was just like a small cramp, you know, so I didn't think much of it. Later on, I woke up to my stomach like hurting so bad. I was having really bad contractions around 1 a.m. and then I slept through it. Woke up at 2 a.m. I woke up at 2 a.m. and I couldn't handle it. It was just so bad. I started timing my contractions. It was, I think they said the rule. Okay, so the contractions rule was the 5-1-1. 5 minutes apart, 1 minute, that lasts for 1 minute for like an hour. Whenever you time your contractions for a whole hour is the 5-1-1. So whenever I was timing my contractions, it was falling under the 5-1-1 rule contractions, and I was texting my sister and she's like, okay, like if your contractions are that small minutes apart, you need to call. So I called the doctor on call that night, and she recommended me coming in since I had a previous C-section anyways. So I got to the hospital around, I want to say 4 o'clock. Whenever they checked me, I was already 3 centimeters dilated. Usually at 3 centimeters they send you back home because they accept you when it's 4 and above. But because I had a previous C-section, they wanted to keep me. And an hour and a half later, around, I want to say, so they checked me around 5. I got there at 4. They checked how dilated I was around 5 o'clock. I was 3 centimeters dilated. Around 6 p.m. Oh no, 6 a.m. almost 6:30. I was waiting for the nurse because they said they were gonna assign me a room in the labor and delivery already. When I got upstairs, I was 6 centimeters dilated, and the nurse asked me if I wanted an epidural. And to me, I think I had a really bad experience with epidural with my son. I was just so numb. I felt like part of it is why I was unable to push him. I was just so numb. Whenever they were telling me to push, I felt like I couldn't feel anything. It's like I'm pushing, but I don't really feel it, you know. And that's what made me decide on, okay, I don't want to get an epidural with my daughter. And I wanted to just like actually feel everything. Maybe without epidural I can have a successful VBAC. So it wasn't really that painful since, like I said, I have a really high tolerance to pain. And later on, I had an urge to like fart or poop, and I was telling the nurse. This was already around, I want to say 8:50. So from 6 to 8:50, I was like, okay, like I can't. Oh, and I think what really helped me dilate so fast was every time I was having a contractions, I would get up from the hospital bed and I would just like sway my hips around and breathe, and it like helped me so much. It kept my mind distracted. So for every contractions, I was getting up and I was like, I had everything in control. So around 8:50, I told her, I was like, I really need to fart, I need to poop, I don't know, I need to push. I feel like I need to push something. I was like that to her, and she's like, okay, do you want me to check you? Because, you know, you can just probably feel like pooping. I don't think you're ready yet, just because you seem really calm, and how by the way you're acting, I don't think she's ready to come out yet. And I was like, okay, is it recording? Okay, my camera had to cool down. And so like I said, she said, by the way you're acting, I don't think she's ready yet. Since I was so calm, she didn't think I was ready. And I was like, okay, just check me. So my water broke on its own. I didn't get an epidural. And going back to her checking me, whenever she finally checked me, I was already 9 centimeters dilated. So literally, when I came to the hospital, I got there at 4:30. She checked me between 4:30 to 5. I was 3 centimeters dilated, and by the time it was already 8:50, I was 9 centimeters dilated. I was ready to push. She was just hurting my hips so bad. It was like this big, it feels like this big poop that I had to push out. Like I needed to push it. Like it was just like the urge of pushing. To me, it's like if I had the epidural, there's no way I wouldn't have felt that. It was just like a whole different experience from my son. And my doctor reminded me, like, hey, you know, you're at 38 weeks, like I mentioned to you, your pelvic bone is too narrow to push. I'm not gonna let you push for over an hour. I'm not gonna put you through that. So if you're pushing for over an hour, we're gonna have to have a C-section. And I was like, okay, you know, like, dang, but okay, you're like, I understand. I was so lucky, and I was really lucky to have an experienced nurse. She's been there for I think 20 or 25 years. And the moment my doctor left, she looked at me, she's like, no, you're gonna push this baby out. I'm gonna help you push this baby out. You're gonna give birth to this baby. And so she tried this new technique, and she grabbed a towel and she made like a rope style out of it. She put it underneath my knee, and while I was pushing, her and their dad, my kid's dad, were pulling my foot apart to kind of make my pelvic wider. So while I pushed, they like split my legs apart like this. And yeah, I had a successful VBAC. I pushed my daughter in I think less than 20 minutes. My doctor left and she's like, okay, I'm gonna let you push. I'm gonna go do some paperwork. And I'll be back. She really thought we were gonna go have the C-section that day, because whenever I was like, I need to push, like I didn't even give the nurses time. I'm like, I need to push. And I felt everything. Every time the nurse said harder, I actually felt it. Unlike my experience with my son, they were telling me, okay, push harder, you're almost there. And like I felt nothing. I was so numb. I didn't feel anything. I just felt like they used too much anesthesia on me. It was just too strong that I couldn't feel anything. So yeah, like my doctor thought that I was gonna take an hour to push. She literally left and came back in. My nurse was like, hey, she's ready, like you gotta come back. My doctor didn't even, this is gross, but my doctor didn't even have time to put gloves on. She turned around, she was rushing, and my daughter was already like about to come out. Her head was already out. So like I pushed, she came out, and I was like, hey, what? You know, like comparing it to my son, I pushed literally almost 2 hours. So pretty much I went from with my son having a C-section and having an epidural to my daughter fully doing it all natural, no epidural, and I pushed her in 20 minutes. Also, I recently watched House of Color, her YouTube video, and she mentioned that she's really sensitive to pain medication. So whenever she gets epidural, she has 3 kids, every time she gets an epidural, she always tells the doctor, like, I'm really sensitive to pain medication and to use a half dose. So honestly, I could have gotten an epidural. I was just not aware, you know, but I wouldn't change my experience and get an epidural. I think I decided for the best. Everything that happened, I don't regret at all. If I were to give any advices to any moms, natural is the way to go. I mean, unless your pain tolerance is really low. But mine was, you know, I had a really great experience, and I had a good attempt for my VBAC. It was a successful VBAC, and hopefully my experience with the castor oil can help future moms or any moms that's confused if they should try it or not. Honestly, like, you don't have to take 2 tablespoons. You can just try it a little bit. To me, like they said, I don't think it works if you're not dilated, but it can dilate you. I think that's what happened to me. So the first time I took it that Sunday, I wasn't dilated at all, but because I took the Midwives Brew, I really truly believe that it helped me dilate a little bit. But because I was taking small amounts every day, also walking a lot, jumping on the exercise ball, I was like bouncing on it every day. The moment I turned 36 weeks, I was bouncing on it every night. So if you want to give birth and try to get your baby out a little bit early, you can try what I try. Okay, but I'm not a doctor or a nurse. Don't take my advice and be like, oh, this girl said this. I'm just saying, in my experience, you know, it worked for me, it could work for you. Really, it's whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you want to do. You know, I know some moms are saying like, okay, your baby will be there whenever they're ready, but for me, I just had like a horrible experience. Even going home, my C-section experience was just so bad. I just felt out of it all the time. I just didn't want to have another C-section and not take care of my baby. I wanted to be there for my baby, because with my son, I just felt like I was just so out of it from all the medications, from the epidural, all the anesthesia that was given to me. Like, I could barely even take care of myself. That's why I was really convinced, like, I don't want my daughter to be a C-section. Like, if I can push her, then I'm gonna try to push her. Like, yes, maybe I tried to, you know, do all this stuff to get her out early, but I really wanted to give birth to her naturally. And it's not like I did all this stuff and I took like crazy castor oil. It was, you know, I just felt like maybe she was also ready to. My body was ready for her. Well, who knows, you know? Well, thank you so much for listening to my story. Hopefully my experience with castor oil or Midwives Brew can help you decide if you want to take it or not, if you want to get your baby out early. And I'll also link a few videos in the description that helped me decide, or, you know, a few things that I've watched that made me like, you know what, I want to try that. Thank you. Bye.